Zhoo, 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 and we are live. Nic Bodiford.
Hey, how you doing?
It's not Bodiford, it's Bodiford.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Every time, baby. We didn't talk about this. I love guessing the pronunciation of guest names right out of the gate. You know?
It's Podfather?
Yes, Podfather. Yeah, love it. Yeah, that's a lot of when I try to figure out the pronunciation, then you can come right back at me with is it Mr. Podfather? How do I address you? You know what I mean? So, yeah. So I'm gonna try to pull up the show sheet here. So this is what'd you think of the show sheet?
Longest one I've ever seen.
Was it? Thank you. Good. All right, so I gotta find it though. Where the hell did I put it? It's right here somewhere. This is really good radio.
Just pure email.
Oh, because the first question is related to the Scott Fish Bowl. Oh, baby. How do you feel about Superflex? Do you like it better than regular leagues?
I don't have a preference. I do like it though, and I think it should. I like that it's gaining traction.
Good. Yeah, Superflex is great, man. I like just the idea that quarterbacks count the most and are the most valuable aligns with what football is. When you're waiting forever to draft a quarterback and you don't care about quarterback until like round 10, which was very like 2020, right? That's when late round quarterback reached zenith as a strategy. Now people are drafting a quarterback, round 2 again. It's been forever. It's been a long time in single quarterback, best ball leagues especially. You'd have to go back a long way to find, multiple second-round quarterback picks.
My first fantasy football draft, I took Carson Palmer in the 4th round. That was in 2006. That was probably the earliest I've taken a quarterback until this year.
All right, so we'll bring you in. You write for the 33rd team. You're over on Josh Larkey's. Josh Larkey was the one that told me about you. Or are you still with them or not?
Yep, 33rd team.
Good.
PFF and 4 for 4.
Oh, shit. Really? Oh, man. So you're prolific. You write for all 3 of them right now?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when I bring you in, I'm going to call you a prolific analyst who wears a lot of logos. You have a lot, yeah. You have a lot of logos. You should write an article for us.
I would love to.
You want to write an article for us? Okay, I'm gonna message Theo right after the show, and we'll get an article up on the site, so then you can add the PP. You can add the PP logo. It's a very prestigious logo, the PP logo.
I'm excited.
A big PP. Big PP logo.
PP. That's
right. Yeah, we want a big PP logo.
Long show sheet and a big PP logo.
You're getting ready, man. I just can't believe you're not in the Scott Fish Bowl.
Well, maybe I am. Well,
I think you are. I think you just didn't get the email.
That might be it.
Do you hear that music in the background?
Oh yeah,
you hear that?
Adrenaline is rising.
Yeah, it's kind of because we do a little pre-show, right? We went live, a little pre-show, and then we see people in the chat. Let's go, senior football. That's right. Let's go. You know what time it is? Oh yeah, it's time to do a show. Oh yeah, Mind the Mansion, baby. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. A man with a lot of logos. Introduced to us from Josh Larkey. He works for 4 for 4. He writes at PFF, the 33rd team with Josh. This is a prolific writer about to be on Player Profiler. It is Nic Bodiford. Talk to me.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. I mean, you come highly recommended. Josh Larkey insisted that we have you on.
He's the best. There are 4 or 5 people in this industry that that mean a lot to me, that have done a lot for me, that give me a lot of opportunities, and he's on that short list. I appreciate Josh a lot.
And, he would have helped you get in the Scott Fish Bowl if you needed it, or, I'm sure the people at 4 for 4 or PFF, well represented in the Scott Fish Bowl, your invitation somehow got lost in the email or lost in the mail. So you're not in it for previous years. We'll make sure we fix it. You write an article for us, I'll make sure you're in the Scott Fish Bowl next year. I'll tell you one thing. 2024, Nic Bodiford's back in the Scott Fish Bowl. Guarantee it.
Thank you.
Scott Fish and I are like this. So this year, it's tight end super premium with bonus points for carries and first downs. That's the back of the napkin Scott Fish Bowl scoring. And according to our projections, you would be an idiot not to draft Travis Kelce with the 101. When I say tight end super premium, doubling everything for tight ends, you agree that it's got to be Kelce, right? You'd have to. You'd be crazy not to.
I could see arguments for quarterbacks. I really do. I like quarterbacks a lot in Superflex, but I think in this specific format, yeah, I think Travis Kelce is a great 101.
Okay, so here's the great news for you. While you're not in it, I am. Okay? And there's nothing I like more than talking about my drafts. Okay? So I'm also in with Drew Dinkmeyer, unfortunately, one of the best minds in the industry. Also looking at Greg Sussman. I mean, just oh, God. So there's some really good analysts here in my division league pod, however you want to think of it. I had the 108, and I did not go quarterback because the quarterbacks I wanted were off the board, especially Jalen Hurts. The idea that Jalen Hurts would make it to the 108 was never going to happen, so I was already preparing to go Jamar Chase from the beginning, and I went Jamar Chase. Okay, I believe the 33rd team is Team Jamar Chase over Team Justin Jefferson. Is that right?
I think that Chase has more support than Jefferson. Yes.
How do you feel?
I just like them both. I know that's not a fun answer, but like we're in a very special era of football that we get to watch these two guys compete, and I think I might be 60% Jefferson, but okay. I recognize like Jamar Chase is I mentally comp him to like supersized or like rocked up Steve Smith, and playing with Joe Burrow, yeah, it's totally fine to have him as the number one overall player in quote unquote normal formats.
So here's the thing. We have expected fantasy points on Player Profiler, and it was a formula that Josh Larkey helped develop. And guess who had the most expected fantasy points per game last year? Jefferson or Chase?
I'm going to guess Chase given the lead up.
Bam. That's correct. That's correct. So as good as Jefferson was, as mind-blowing as Jefferson was, actually Chase had more expected fantasy points per game. And Chase was also the alpha when they played together at LSU. And now Chase is the same age that Jefferson was last year when Jefferson put up the 1,800 receiving yards. And it tells me that Jamar Chase is teed up for 2,000 this year. I don't think that Jefferson can get there. I think last year was the year he would have got there if he was going to get there. But this is the year. Like last year was the year to get Jefferson. You see? Just like the year before that was the year to get Cooper Kupp. Now, this is the year to get Jamar Chase. It really doesn't have to be that much harder than that. I think that you need to switch and flip your 60-40 to 40-60 for Jefferson. You need to go 60-40 Chase. That's my recommendation. I drafted Jamar Chase in the Scott Fish Bowl to 108. And then I selected Deshaun Watson at the 205 after a bunch of other position players were gone. Trevor Lawrence was gone. Fields was gone. Watson's still there. 2 picks later went Daniel Jones. So you got to feel good about Watson at that spot, right?
Yes. He's a complicated guy to talk about drafting, but yes.
What I like about Watson is there's a lot of easy stackability. If you have high quality fantasy production, right, which is what Deshaun Watson's been delivering for many years, both as a thrower with his arm and with his legs. If you can find easy stacks with that guy, including his number one wide receiver, then that's a huge bonus. That's the great benefit of Russell Wilson, that you can get Judy and Sutton without paying a premium. That's the problem with Dak, is that in the Scott Fish Bowl, damn near impossible to draft both Dak and CeeDee Lamb, right? That's the problem. With some of these quarterbacks, it becomes difficult, like Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. It's challenging, right? I could not stack Chase with Burrow because it literally went Burrow, Herbert, Chase. So that wasn't an option. But with some of these quarterbacks, their number one receiver is available. And we'll talk about a bunch of these guys later. But that's just something I like about Justin Herbert. Something I like about Trevor Lawrence. That's a benefit of Deshaun Watson. And you get a highly mobile, elite thrower whose number one receiver is available a little bit later. I have circled Amari Cooper on my board to try to get him at the 705. So that's just a little bit of a window into what my plans are. At the 305, CeeDee Lamb. So it went A.J. Brown, T.J. Hawkinson, Aaron Rodgers, the 304, and at the 305, CeeDee Lamb. So I wasn't that you agree that's good value?
Oh, yeah.
So you like CeeDee Lamb. So take a step back for a second. This is Superflex. Start one quarterback, two receivers. How do you feel about that?
Two quarterback, one.
Sorry, two receivers, one quarterback.
It's Superflex?
It's Superflex. So I started wide receiver, quarterback, wide receiver.
Understood. Yeah, I think it's fine. I am a sucker for going double quarterback early, but I love CeeDee Lamb. I love the rise of the power slot wide receiver. I'm in on what you're doing here.
There's a great case for what you're saying, right? A great case for what you're saying. However, if I had started with double tapping quarterback, it would have been like Fields and Watson, right? Which is great. Which would have been great. Could have gone Fields and Watson. I didn't, right? I didn't. Instead, I like Jamar Chase and Lamb at the top of my wide receiver group. You start three receivers. And part of the reason why I decided to push off second quarterback is I was talking to a bunch of people, Patrick Murphy, who runs our Fantasy Intelligence Network, Billy Muzio. The case is that the Jordan Loves, the Kenny Pickett's, some of these lesser quarterbacks are helped by the fact there is no penalty for interceptions and turnovers. So in that world, in the old Scott Fish Bowl rules, you were heavily punished for not just turnovers, but also incompletions. All right, so they had a whole completion percentage bonus, which helped quarterbacks that were highly accurate, and it really punished these younger quarterbacks and quarterbacks that were turnover prone or had accuracy issues. So that was the case to go super premium quarterback drafting. This year, there's more of a case to wait at quarterback and just let the board play out. The problem with drafting two quarterbacks back-to-back in Superflex is you remove the ability to let the draft play out and to be able to read the room and see what the demand is for quarterback. And I realized that the demand for quarterback wasn't that high, that I could not draft a quarterback in round 3, not draft a quarterback in round 4, and then make sure I got the quarterback I wanted in round 5. So in round 3, I went Lamb. Round 4, I went George Kittle. So to get Kittle in round 4 with the tight end super premium bonus versus Kelce in round 1, I think that's as good as it gets. To be able to get Kittle at the 408, given that scoring system. All we need for Kittle really to be a super smash is like 6 missed games by either Ayuk or Samuel. But as it stands, I understand that his base projection is not going to be as great as even some other tight ends that are drafted later than him because he's competing for targets with Ayuk, with Samuel, with McCaffrey. But when we talk about contingent upside with Kittle in a big field tournament, that's what you want, and that's why I like that pick. What do you think?
So I'm writing about Kittle right now because I'm trying to figure out like his means of winning last year. It was obviously touchdown heavy. His usage has fluctuated kind of bizarrely in terms of like end zone targets. I like him, and I think it's appropriate to take him as being the final realistic elite tight end. I can't figure out if concern over target competition is overblown yet, and we might not know until the quarterback situation is settled, and I don't think that it is. That doesn't mean that I like him. Yeah.
No, it's not. But the upside is also that Purdy takes another step forward. What you need with Kittle is you need Purdy under center, right? If it's Lance, it's a problem, and it's probably a wasted pick. It's a bad pick. But if it's Purdy, and he does take a step forward and opens up the passing game even more than he did last year, then we're talking about some real upside.
Yeah.
Because then we don't have any quarterback rush attempts in the red zone, more touchdowns for Kittle, just more overall targets with more volume. That's what we're hoping for. And we at Player Profiler, our team Purdy, we have made the decision to project Purdy as the starter this year and for the majority of the season. And if it's not him, it'd probably be Darnold. There seems to be forces at work to suppress Trey Lance and to prevent him from producing at all. It's just a feeling. It's a feeling that I get when I observe the situation. I feel like this kid's not going to get a chance.
So we're getting ahead of ourselves on the show sheet here with the San Francisco quarterback talk. How far do we want to go into this?
Keep going. Let's keep going.
Okay. So since the beginning, shout out to Jeff Mueller at JM Thrive PT. I'm a huge proponent of physical therapy, and this is going to come up more than once on this show.
Hey, by the way, Jeff Mueller wrote up a number of players, like 40 plus players, in our Injury Finder app. Go to the App Store, get the Injury Finder, and when you click on any player that had a surgery last year, you're going to see the full PT write-up from Jeff Mueller.
That's awesome. He is phenomenal. He's a fantastic person and a fantastic analyst. So he's been all over the Brock Purdy timeline since the injury happened. He has had it. Here are the benchmarks that he needs to hit. He can do it. He can get to 100%, or at least, return to performance by week 1. And he's so far, he's like, just Purdy's just a hair ahead of schedule. So I think he's going to be fine. I think what is going to happen is that there's actually going to be a quarterback battle in August. And I hear you with the forces at work to suppress Trey Lance thing. I have no idea if Trey Lance is good, but the forces at work, to me, every time I read about this, it is San Francisco reporters just sort of declaring that Purdy's the guy. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of substantiation. And I've asked them, and I've sparred with them from time to time. They may be right that Purdy is just the guy and there's no battle going on here, but I am still waiting to see something concrete that says this is absolutely Brock Purdy's team and not Trey Lance's. As for Darnold, I mean, the guy could make a few starts. I find that less likely than that Trey Lance makes a few starts.
You want to know my case for Darnold?
Yes.
Kyle Shanahan's ego. Nothing would make Kyle Shanahan happier than him fixing a quarterback. Last year it was elevating a 7th round pick. Ooh, Mr. Irrelevant. I'll make him relevant. Right? Now it's like, oh, this guy washed out. He was the 3rd overall pick. Well, I didn't coach him. Watch me coach him up. That's so Shanahan. That is just so you would think that it would be easy. Like, let's just see what this kid can do. This Trey Lance, get him in there. If I were me, Trey Lance would be announced the starter in week 1. Because if things click for him at the NFL level, he is a difference-making weapon that Purdy and Darnold could never be. And if it doesn't work out, it's one game and you move on, right? They still make the playoffs. No harm, no foul, no timeout, no nothing. It's easy, right? You got it. Why would you start the season with anyone other than Trey Lance? And why would you commit to anyone other than Trey Lance? You worried about hurting Brock Purdy's feelings? His feelings were already hurt by the NFL when they didn't draft him until the end of the entire event. Now he's been a starter in the league. He has all this confidence. You could tell him, hey, you're gonna back up this guy that we drafted 3rd overall and dwarfs you in every athleticism metric that's ever been developed for quarterbacks. And this is just part of your whole story as an athlete. You've been dealing with this your whole life. So it would only probably inspire him more to have to come in and clean up a mess that Trey Lance left. Whereas if you bench Trey Lance to start the season, that is I think a much more fragile mental state, given the fact that he had to change his throwing motion because of his broken hand. And every time he gets back in there, he gets another injury or he gets sort of demoralized by the coach in some way that may or may not be intentional. So you could see like everything for me, if I were running the franchise, would be about building up Trey Lance and setting him up for success. And I don't get that vibe from San Francisco.
That's fair. That's totally fair. And that might be ultimately what the reporters are hinting at and that I'm failing to pick up on. Last summer, actually, so last year, there was another website that I also contributed to a little small. I helped start it with a couple guys that left an SB Nation site. It's called nerdballff.com.
Oh, that's another logo for you.
Yeah. So, long.
It's a good logo.
That's right.
I like Nerdball. That's a good one. I like that, actually.
Thank you. So I had a podcast going there, and I haven't done anything with them this year, but I had a podcast going there, Nerding Out with Nic Bodiford, and Matt Waldman was kind enough to join. This is actually how I met Ryan Reynolds through that. A lot of good people gave me their time, but Matt Waldman came on and he told this story about the Shanahan family generally. And I can attach, or I can send it to you if you want to put it out there, because it was 10 minutes of just pure gold, where he talks about, I believe it was the story of Mike Shanahan in Denver and the battles that he had with Jake Plummer, where he didn't want Plummer as the quarterback, but they had all the success with Plummer, and so the following season, instead of setting Plummer up for success, he took Plummer's favorite play out of the playbook and made him play without that play for the whole season.
Dude, he's a vindictive fuck.
And so
just ask Brandon Ayuk.
Right, yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if Kyle Shanahan kind of learned these lessons about how to motivate players to screw them over.
Motivate.
Yeah. Right.
Motivate, sure.
Right. But that's perfect. The blocking saga for Brandon Ayuk is perfect.
Yeah, motivation by just jerk behavior, that's not a thing. Like that's very 1960s sports. It's not a real thing. So you mentioned early quarterback and Superflex is a strategy. What if right you're getting blocked at quarterback, it's a run on quarterback. You can't get the quarterback you want in round 2, let's say you start with Burrow or something cool, right? By the way, what are the odds that Burrow outscores Mahomes this year?
Close. I mean, he maybe higher than 50%.
Yes,
he might,
right?
There's a case to be made that he should be the favorite.
Yes. There it is. And in the MVP odds, BetMGM, promo code Underworld, the odds of Allen, Burrow, Hurts, I believe they should all be more likely to take down the MVP because they didn't win it last year. It's been shown that even players that outperformed the previous year, if they won the previous year, they're much less likely to win it. We're tired of giving the trophy to the same guy. We want to give it to a different guy. So one of the worst bets is Mahomes to win MVP future. It's got to be one of the worst because what he would have to do to win this year is mind-boggling. Just ask Brady. Ask Peyton Manning what happens when you follow up one elite year with another even more elite year and lose. So it's Burrow. It's Burrow, bro. And Burrow is set up to have even more success this year with much better weapons. And could you argue that the AFC North will score more points than the AFC West?
Yes. Oof. We got to keep some in the tank here, but I'm excited about the Chargers.
We're both excited about the Chargers, but I'm not excited about the Raiders.
Fair. Fair.
And Denver has a good defense. The problem is the Chargers have a good defense. The Chiefs have a good defense. Denver has a good defense. And the Raiders' defense is better than their offense, which isn't saying a lot, but it's true. So there you've got a situation where you've got quality defenses and Jimmy Garoppolo is the starting quarterback for one of the teams. And then you look at the AFC North, Steelers, they have a below average defense, right? Baltimore, they're going to have a good defense again. I'm sure the Browns defense will be good, right? But the Bengals defense, they lost key pieces. So you have improving offenses across the board in the AFC North with defenses that are either flat or being diminished. Plus, you look at the quarterbacks on top. We got Lamar, you got Deshaun Watson now for a full season, and you've got Joe Burrow, and you've got Kenny Pickett, who's no longer a rookie. So to me, this is where a lot of the points are going to be scored in the AFC, and I'm pretty excited for it. I think that if you were going to go late round quarterback in Superflex, like I just did in the Scott Fish Bowl, the last two picks, Pickett, Freiermuth, and so going two of the top 10 tight ends in a tight end super duper uber double premium format, based on the receivers and the running backs that got drafted ahead of this pick. I feel like I had no choice because it's in a tournament setting. We have 1,000+ teams. You have to stack, right, Nick? You have to stack.
Yeah, I fully support it.
I'm stacking the AFC North, dude. I'm eating at my own restaurant. I talk about the AFC North all the time. If I can somehow get Amari Cooper, then it's a double stack of AFC North offenses.
There should be plenty of... So where are you at on Elijah Moore?
Well, we are in the process of dialing down our expectations slightly on Amari Cooper because talking to Billy, talking to Theo, we believe that where there's smoke, there's fire with Elijah Moore and that he is going to exceed expectations and that he's going to look like rookie year Elijah Moore. They went out and acquired him for a reason. The Browns have probably a top 5 analytics-focused front office, and they saw the advanced metrics on player profiler like we did from Elijah Moore as a rookie, just like Howie Roseman saw the advanced metrics, the yards created per touch on DeAndre Swift, and was like, however this guy is not fitting in with the locker room, he's not showing up to lift weights, he's not showing up for strength and conditioning, he may be demoralizing your team in Detroit, but we have Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts is going to solve this problem with DeAndre Swift demoralizing his teammates. We're not worried about that nearly as much. We're just going to go straight to the metrics and get the most efficient players in here. So that's what Cleveland did. So you could just look at what was exchanged, the picks exchanged to acquire Elijah Moore as a way of valuing him as a player, but that would be a mistake because that's just based on an expedient exit that had to be done because of politics in New York. That's not necessarily an indictment, a full indictment of the player. I think he deserves a second chance, and I think that he's going to be the starter opposite Amari Cooper, and he's a real threat to Cooper. He's one of the reasons why I actually didn't draft Cooper in this past round. I went Freiermuth, and one of the reasons I had a debate with Theo. I had Theo on the phone with me making that pick in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I was like, listen, I want to lock in this Watson Amari Cooper stack. And he's like, man, there's going to be a lot of target competition in Cleveland, and I'm just not sure you need to pull the trigger on Cooper. You can wait around.
Cool. Yeah. I'm just basically in on all of the Cleveland passing game guys. I mean, Amari Cooper continues to be undervalued, but I am very excited about Elijah Moore. If he hits. Like he hits. He could tear the cover off.
Dude, he had a 42% dominator rating in college at Ole Miss in the SEC. Do you realize how rare it is to look up and see an SEC receiver posting a 42% dominator rating? That is hard to do. And he did it with 4.4 wheels, 97th percentile agility. So he has the athletic profile that matches his production on the field. He just happened to have a year in New York from hell. Okay. Do you realize how volatile wide receiver careers are? One thing I always like to tell people is go back and look at past wide receivers. Go look at Randy Moss. Go look at Andre Johnston. Go look at a bunch of elite receivers from the past, and you're going to see big peaks and troughs in their yearly production. Wide receivers, by their nature, are hugely volatile in that they have less control over their touches than other offensive pieces. They are further away from the ball, right? And it's a more difficult process that needs to unfold for them to actually get the ball in their catch radius, right? So it's just for a running back, if they're just going to get the carries they get, and as long as they don't fumble the carry, that's a touch, right? That's a rep. But their reps are all uncertain year to year. They don't know what their catchable pass rate's going to be. And then you have all these other forces at play where, for whatever reason, wide receivers tend to have more attitude and have more friction with coaches and quarterbacks than any other position on the field. Terrell Owens being the signature example of that, the quintessential sort of a truculent, difficult to manage talent at the position. And I think part of it is that they are so lacking control of their reps that makes them a little more sensitive to everything that's going on, and then that can lead to tension and then being traded. Like, think about DeAndre Hopkins, right? Boom, gone from Houston. He's like, what happened? What just happened? These wide receivers all the time, boom, gone. Marquise Brown, gone. What happened? Oh, didn't even finish his rookie contract. So for a lot of reasons, just looking at the trade that happened and dismissing Elijah Moore because they didn't get a lot of draft picks for him is not right.
No, I agree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, the team was willing to forfeit a second-round pick. And I know that was mostly just a bit of a trade back given the third that they also gave up. But, like, day two capital, giving it up is still relevant. I think discounting that is incorrect. And to your
point, it was a one-round pick swap, Nick. That's it. That's all it was, a one-round pick swap. Well, no, it's the second round. That's a good point you're making. Moving up from the third round to the second round is big, especially last year. There was some real coveted players that were there, right there. I mean, that they didn't actually use that pick though, right? It was for the 43rd pick in the draft. It went from New York. It went from Cleveland to New York to Green Bay. And they ended up taking Luke Musgrave, who was a coveted player. Joe Tippmann went right after that to the Jets. And he was one of the best guards in the draft. It was a coveted pick.
If they end up signing DeAndre Hopkins, then I think we're going to have to kind of readjust here. But I think it's a bit of a tell right now that they feel very comfortable with the current pass catching group. That the only interest, I mean, I haven't seen a whole lot between these two camps, between Cleveland and DeAndre Hopkins. I know that there are some rumors, it would make sense that Watson and Hopkins would want to play together again, but I think that this is a positive signal that there's nothing heating up between the two groups.
Another positive signal. All these teams that are divesting from the running game, I like. If you're the Cowboys and you're just going to let Zeke walk and not backfill him, up to this point at least, that's a signal that this is a passing team, right? Even Kareem Hunt, they didn't backfill him. I know they still have Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb is one of the best runners in the league. But the bottom line is they said, we're going to let him walk, and we're not going to add any talent at the running back position. We're going to just go with Jerome Ford, whoever. If Nick Chubb gets hurt, we don't have much of a backup plan, and that's okay because fuck the running game. Where you have, these are the other teams like Atlanta, right? They technically hit on Tyler Algier, and they're like, no. More running, right? Like the Panthers. No, we got to bring in Miles Sanders, right? We're going to overpay Miles Sanders. We're going to make him the sort of crown jewel of the free agent class, right? No, that's not optimal use of roster space and salary cap, but it's also a signal that they want to be a running team. Carolina wants to run the ball and play defense. That's what they want to do. So if you're divesting from the running game, that is a signal that you're probably going to play faster and have a high pass rate, and I love that.
Tyler Algier not getting a featured role this year is a bummer because that dude earned it, and they could have done so much more for the team as a whole had they not gone Bijan. There was a previous podcast you were doing where you were talking about, is it even if Bijan Robinson makes a Hall of Fame, was it a wasted pick? Yeah, it was, because it's just the value of the position. And it's not like I'm against Bijan. Like I think Bijan has a really interesting range of outcomes. It's high volume. There were comments that the team has made that like maybe kind of hint that they see him as a Kamara type player, talking about him as the contact balance guy versus the sledgehammer Algier. Terry Fontenot's there, et cetera, et cetera. I like Bijan, but in terms of team building, I don't know. I think ownership should be a little bit more liberal with getting rid of coaches from time to time. Like, yeah, when Mike McCarthy said that he lied in his interview when he was on stage with Jerry Jones should have fired him on the spot. Right. Now that's my I'm harsh like that, but yeah. Anyway, this was a complete mismanagement of resources. It's not like, what John Dorsey did to Sashi's stockpile, but like that was a bad move. It was bad. Well, that comes on the heels of drafting Kyle Pitts over Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell. Oof. I heard Pat Kerrane once describe this as they drafted Kyle Pitts to play the Jamar Chase role when they could have just taken Jamar Chase. And he was just go ahead. No, this is we're putting on these are our Bijan in the mid first round drafters, right? Bijan mid first round. This is me. Hey guys, I'm going Bijan, man. YOLO. Bijan first round, baby. It's like, get out of here, man. Pollard's going to outscore him. You get Pollard at the 2-3 turn. Fuck out of here, man. Right? I agree. I'm in on Pollard. I'm definitely below consensus. I mean, like I said, there's a fun range of outcomes for Bijan, but yeah, I've got Pollard as RB5 and I've got Bijan RB8.
Yeah, so I always look forward to people drafting Bijan in my drafts. Like, please take him. I've drafted Bijan. You know where I've drafted Bijan? I've drafted Bijan at the 101 in Dynasty rookie drafts. That's where I've got him. And I haven't been able to get him anywhere else. That's the one place on planet Earth I've been able to get a Bijan Robinson is the 101 in rookie drafts. Otherwise, go pound sand with your rookie running back in the top 6 of any format. What are you doing? Right? Unless it's a dynasty startup, single quarterback, or any dynasty rookie draft, that's not the zone to be drafting a Bijan Robinson. It's okay. It's okay to let him go have a great rookie year and then make a much more informed decision, a much more information-based decision on where you want to draft him next year. You can miss out on him. It's okay. This reminds me of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted at the 101 in the FFPC. Multiple FFPC teams drafted him at the 101. This is after McCaffrey was breaking fantasy, right? As McCaffrey is breaking fantasy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes out and scores a bunch of fantasy points in the Thursday night game to start the season. Okay? The FFPC has drafts on Friday and Saturday. So you have information on this one game as you're drafting. And just that alone got people fired up enough because he was a rookie and it was the Chiefs. We just got to get this guy. It's just at all costs 101. And I'm like, and the Bijan at the 105s that I'm seeing, like that's what that is. That's the same thing. Like, man, I love him so much because I haven't seen him. Right? That's one of the reasons why they love him so much is because they haven't seen him.
So you mentioned that you were taking Bijan 101 Superflex Dynasty. Why? Why wouldn't it be CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson? And I know that comes off as a contrarian take, but like I want to invest in quarterbacks. I felt like I was taking crazy pills all draft season. This seemed very clear to me that I would want to invest in the position with longevity. Yeah. Am I off base for like, I absolutely would have taken Anthony Richardson or Stroud over Bijan, and where I had the 101, I just traded out and I let someone else do that.
I am in a win now mode team. And the one time I got Robinson twice, once was Superflex, once was non-Superflex at the 101. And I just happened to be strong at quarterback and it was in win now mode and it was fine. I was good with it. Like, it just kind of depends. Like, to me, Anthony Richardson or Bijan Robinson in a rookie draft really just kind of depends on your goals. If Anthony Richardson starts slow, he's still going to have plenty of value, though. That's the thing. But I don't want to, in my position where I have so many leagues, the odds that I'm going to go ahead and try to grind a trade, right, if Anthony Richardson starts slow and I'm in a win now mode, and it's one of those things where maybe you could call it dynasty laziness, where more often than not, I agree with you. When you're sitting there at the 101 in a Superflex rookie draft, you should be drafting for the guy that could be like a top 5 startup pick for the next 7-8 years, which is Anthony Richardson. He's the only guy in this class that has anything close to that kind of upside. He's a bigger, faster version of Cam Newton as a rookie. Right? Cam Newton kind of got bigger as the years went on because he famously didn't care about his strength and conditioning. He didn't even stretch. You ever seen the videos of this?
I've not seen the videos of him refusing to stretch. That Marquez Valdes-Scantling was a big no stretch guy, but it seemed like Cam was always smoking cigars whenever he was doing interviews, which seemed counterproductive.
Whenever they would show Panthers camp while they were stretching, it would be the coaches walking around and Cam walking around with a towel on his head, like kicking people and messing up their hair and joking around. But the one thing you never saw him doing was stretching. One thing you never saw him doing was lifting weights. That just was. And then you're not allowed to be surprised when you're trying to be a top-level premier athlete. And if you don't invest in your strength and conditioning during that 10 years when you're in your 20s, then when you reach age 30, you need to have everything in line, have all your documents, finances, everything you need perfectly in order to retire. Because that's what the league is going to force you to do, because everyone else's body is crumbling as they take all these hits, and you have no choice but to get in the weight room and build that back up. But you're just going to be leaking athleticism throughout your 20s unless you go in and invest the time in the weight room to resuscitate some of it and bring some of it back. And so that's why you see a bunch of wide receivers, a bunch of quarterbacks. I mean, we're not talking about running back. I mean, most running backs, but age 30, it's over. It's a wrap, dude. It's a wrap. And these are the same guys that were no-shows in the weight room their whole time. Like Julio Jones, famously a no-show in the weight room. And when he turned 30, it was like a switch was turned off and all those fast-twitch muscle fibers left his body.
He coasted on just otherworldly athleticism for so long. Like, as I recall, he ran a 4.39, I think, 40 while recovering with a Jones fracture.
Yeah. And if you can do that when you're age 23, 24, 25, 26, you don't need to be in the weight room. You don't see any need. You don't see the results. You don't see the payoff at all. To you, it's waste, right? But to some of these guys that love the sport so much, and they recognize that just that little extra edge, whatever that little thing is, that level of intensity for the profession that a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown has, where he's gonna squeeze every ounce of long-term athleticism out of his body, and you know it. He's been trained to do that by his father. Right? He comes from this family of weightlifters, and that's just who he is. He's a complete dog. He's gonna get out there and he's just gonna want to eat your face. And that's why in Dynasty, I want that guy. Right? That's the guy I want. If I can get a guy that's going to put up huge numbers and is also, we know he's going to play out for long. So he has Amon-Ra St. Brown also has the perfect body type to play to age 36, 37. So if you have that body type, which is a low stress body type on your connective tissue, plus you have that dog mentality, like he has one of the highest dog ratings that we have at Player Profiler. You know, Cody's no longer with us. I mean, he's still alive, but he's no longer at Player Profiler, so we're not going to have the dog rating as dialed in, in the years ahead. We might bring it back. I don't know. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the highest, right? Just because he's trying to eat faces. That's what he's trying to do every day. And that's just, some of these guys are not interested in that. And that's where there's a gap in our understanding of players and situations sometimes. We're like, okay, this guy's not that efficient, or this guy's good but not great, or this guy's exceptional, right? Like DeAndre Swift. But there is this missing piece, and it manifests not just in like an early exit from the league. It also manifests in coaches pulling opportunities from them, and it's frustrating, right? If you show me a player with awesome efficiency that is getting frustratingly low opportunity share, I'll probably, odds are, show you a player who is not in lockstep with the culture, and a big part of that is the whole off-season conditioning program and the whole process of taking care of your body during the season.
Yeah, and I should correct the record there. Ironically, I said it was Marcus Valdes-Scantling who wouldn't stretch. I think it was actually Equinemius St. Brown, which is hysterical given ARSB's work ethic. But yeah, I confused my former.
Well, dude, brothers are famously, I think brothers can be polar opposites. Right? Some brothers,
Yeah.
you can't even, like, I have these two nephews that were here. I talk about, I was telling Alan and Theo about my two nephews that came over, and you can't believe they're related. You can't even believe they're related. They're the polar opposite dudes. Like, one guy is, he reads books and, he is into art and things like that. Another kid, he just wants to break things and run fast and throw his body into things. They're just totally different guys. They're both great. And one of them is going to be one hell of a middle linebacker. I can tell you that right now. Or strong safety, maybe. They could maybe strong safety for Falmouth High in Maine. He's going to be, look out. In about 10 plus years, look out for an O'Hara in the Portland area football team. It's gonna be a menace.
So speaking of brothers, there was one brother on the show sheet in Travis Kelce, who we're trying to figure out who can dethrone this guy.
Yes,
I think for me it's just a chalk play. I think it's Mark Andrews. And fortunately, with all of the websites that I have access to, I combed through every database that I get to look at to try to figure out where the holes are in Mark Andrews' game. But at the end of the day, I'm so excited about the Todd Monken offense, and I'm very high on Rashad Bateman. The cortisone injection thing with the Liz Frank, it's a little bit strange, but I think that we have reason to believe that he's going to be fine. They pulled the pins out, so the foot was irritated, blah, blah, blah. The point is...
Well, you know what that is, though? You know what that is? Can I just tell you what that is? Rashad Bateman also has a high dog rating. Okay? He's an intense dude. He's not here to play. Like, he's here to kill people, right? Figuratively.
That tracks.
Figuratively.
Okay.
He's here to eat faces. Okay. So what probably happened is that he was impatient and trying to work out on the thing, and it flared up and got inflamed. That's probably what happened. Not that he's like a brittle dude.
No, it happened right after they pulled the hardware out of the foot, which means that the Liz Frank structure had holes in it that the body was trying to regrow bone. And as long as the bone fills in, he's going to be fine. There's no reason that wouldn't happen. But it's still a question, right, in the pass catching core. So as far as Andrews goes, we've got Bateman with the foot, but with a high ceiling. Zay Flowers, I'm sure he has a very high dog rating, but he's a rookie. We have Odell Beckham Jr.
You're sure he has? I don't know if he has a high dog rating. I think his dog rating's fine.
Zay Flowers?
No, I think he is an intense guy. I don't have the dog rating in front of me. Like, I'm on Ross St. Brown, I know for a fact.
Okay. Steve Smith, this might be a sore subject, but Steve Smith, he gave Zay Flowers, if I recall correctly, a stamp of dog rating approval. So, but I don't know how that jives with the player profile.
No, I'm sure Steve Smith's a genius. He knows a lot more than me about all players.
That's right. So I've looked through Andrew's profile to try to figure out a reason why I should come up with a more exciting, non-chalk player to compete with Travis Kelce. And all I'm seeing is that every year of his career, he's been over 1.85 yards per out run. Per playerprofiler.com, he's ranked number 1 in target share in both 2022 and 2021. He was number 3 in 2020 and 2019. Among NFL tight ends with at least 75 targets over the last 2 years, this is per SIS, Andrews ranks top 5 both seasons in average depth of target. The things that Monken is going to bring to the table, and what's so exciting about this, so what he's going to bring to the table, they're going to increase pace and they're going to throw downfield more. They don't necessarily have to increase their passing rate, though, because the overall play volume should just go up. So Andrews has a few safety hatches built in here to just see more volume because there's going to be more passing volume. There's going to be a larger target share, period. So
there's going to be more points scored, a lot more in Baltimore.
There you go. And the AFC North, as you mentioned earlier. So for me, I think it's Mark Andrews. If there's a guy to knock Kelce off, then I think it's him. Do you recall how highly he went in your SFB draft?
I don't recall, but I will pull it up right now.
Okay. Because
unfortunately, I didn't get him. I wanted him, but he went at the 203. I couldn't get him. I took Jamar Chase over him. It was a mistake.
That would have been interesting.
It was a thought. I was between Chase, Jefferson, and Andrews. So at least I considered him. I thought I might be able to get him at the 205. I knew I couldn't get Jefferson or Chase. So this is part of the game theory that goes into this. You know, yes, it's possible to optimize every pick just based on projected points, but sometimes your projected points are different than ADP. That's why you always have to factor in ADP when you're making a draft pick, because especially if it's close, just take the guy that you think could make it to you. Always set your league up to give you gifts. And part of that is taking a guy that you might have ranked a couple slots lower than another guy that happens to have a later ADP. Just don't give your league mates credit. That's one mistake that fantasy gamers make all the time. They give their league mates too much credit.
I hear you. I made the mistake early in my fantasy career. I was thinking about this in anticipation of this show, just things that I've done wrong in terms of planting flags and allowing value to get past me in drafts when I was overly confident in a take. I really enjoyed the rise of best ball and just playing the exposure game. Of course, it sometimes makes for poor podcasting because I'll just say, yeah, I like Jamar Chase this amount and Justin Jefferson. I like them both. I'm not going to choose, but yeah, don't do your league mates any favors.
That's right. Okay, so now I have a special segment just for you. I mean, we do it in every show, but this one's just for you. It's called 5 Burning Questions, but actually it's not. It's now 10 burning questions. It was 5 burning questions. It's now 10 burning questions. Ready? Are you ready for this?
I'm excited. Let's do it.
Okay. We have 5 burning questions after this. Ask me, hey, what is the World Series of fantasy or the Super Bowl of fantasy football? And it's easy. It's the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. It's a $6 million prize pool. And they've had their Never Too Early Best Ball leagues cranking since February. And so the FFPC is the answer to so many questions. Hey, where's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC. That's why we partner with them. If you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, seasonal, best ball, dynasty, go to the FFPC. And don't forget, promo code Underworld to get you $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team, no matter what team it is, no matter what format it is, at the FFPC. Go do it. 5. Now 10. Burning questions. Where should Alvin Kamara be drafted? There's been news. It's only a misdemeanor. He's going to be fine. It's funny how this happens. There's overreaction. Felony! Or, he's going to court next week. Next thing you know, the trial's been postponed a year, and then it's settled, and it's a misdemeanor, and then... Now what?
Well, so with last night's news, and shout out to Drew Davenport, he broke down in one of his legal update threads kind of where he thinks that this is headed. The league gives out an automatic 6-game suspension in the event of a felony, but as you've said, he's pleading to a misdemeanor, and there's something like as part of the deal, he's going to cover medical costs, and so I think the victim is incentivized to take the deal. So setting the bar at under 6 games, Drew Davenport thinks is probably going to be around 4. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I moved him up to the back end of the RB2 bunch last night after this news broke. The signs around the team, I think, kind of point to maybe they knew this was going to be the case all along. They brought in, a fun teammate, and an awesome grinder in Jamal Williams. They drafted Kendry Miller, who is an effective rusher. But they didn't do a whole lot to replace the passing game production. So they may have always known this is kind of how it was going to go. So with some comfort now, I guess, built into this, that we should have him for, what is that? 12 games, 13 games. I'm not good at math. Right now, I think 7th round on Underdog is appropriate. I could be convinced to go a little bit higher, but just looking at kind of where some tier breaks are, that's where I felt comfortable. Where are you at?
Well, let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the Saints schedule, shall we? Have you seen the Saints schedule? Go to the world famous draft kit. And world famous draft kit has not only the schedule, but also the difficulty of every team on that schedule. So if we pull up the schedule for the New Orleans Saints, they close out the year New York, Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Now, Atlanta's week 18, so that one doesn't count for most fantasy leagues. But New York, Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, those are not scary defenses. The Giants are the best defense of that group. The problem is week 16, week 17 are on the road. So that's what hurt. The splits with Alvin Kamara are as wide as any running back in the league when you look at home and away splits. So the fact that it's at the Rams, at the Bucs, that's not great. But those are two aging defenses that are years away from being recapitalized and rebuilt. So I like those matchups to start to end the year.
Yeah, fair enough. There's another guy we're going to talk about here who has a brutal opening slate.
Oh, no. We're breaking news. Breaking news. I just pulled up the Colts on the draft kit. Guess who the Colts have? We talked about why you draft Anthony Richardson at the 101 in Superflex rookie drafts. Here's why it was a mistake, right? Oh, you want to win this year. Oh, you got to go Bijan Robinson. Not so fast. Podfather was wrong. To close out the year, the Colts have Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Houston. Oh, my God! Anthony Richardson is going to have one hell of a December. He could be the number 1 quarterback in all of fantasy in the month of December. Because he will have been acclimated to the league by then. You're in the fantasy playoffs. Damn it. That was the move. His upside is so incredible. I mean, Cam Newton was the number 3 quarterback in fantasy in his rookie year, but Anthony Richardson is like more athletic and did, you could say, more in the SEC than Cam Newton did when you adjust for the lack of weapons, when they had no offensive line, no receivers, totally on his own, just getting incrementally better every year with limited reps. There's a lot. And when you look at the advanced metrics, he actually was making quicker decisions and getting the ball out at age 20, where a Will Levis was eating sacks at age 23 in similar situations. So that's one of the reasons why Richardson was drafted in the top 5 and Will Levis was not drafted in the first round at all. Didn't mean to interrupt you. We just had the breaking news with the Colts schedule, which was released months ago. Was just pulled up on the draft kit. It was like, oh, wait a second. We need to emphasize this. Also, great time for a sound effect is whenever I'm wrong. And was no excuse for going Bijan over Anthony Richardson.
No, the Anthony Richardson's sack avoidance has not been discussed enough. This was something that I talked about in a Week 17 look ahead for wide receiver cornerback matchups. Michael Pittman Jr., I think it could be a little rocky to start the season, but I think that he's going to be a high score in week 17. We'll see what that's like in a few
He's
months.
a true alpha, man. There's not many true alphas left in the league, but even like T. Higgins has the body of a true alpha, but he's not the actual alpha on his team. To have the body and the athleticism and the efficiency of a true alpha and then actually operate as that alpha on your team, Pittman's one of just a handful of players in the league that are left that are in this archetype where he's like 6'4", jacked. He's the man. I mean, and the other receivers are just auxiliary receivers. Alec Pierce is a one-dimensional situational field stretcher. Josh Downs is an underneath separator. A Deontay Johnson type player, right? They don't have a tight end of consequence in the passing game. It's all about Michael Pittman, baby.
We're going to talk a little bit more about Alec Pierce later on, but
you like Pierce? You like Pierce?
Well, I like him at ADP. I think he'd be a pain in managed leagues, but there's some fun ADOT stuff going on here that I think he's a good parent.
There's no doubt in best ball leagues, you have Anthony Richardson. You've got to pair him with multiple wide receivers if you're going to go that route, and you don't need to pair him with the tight end. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to pair him with Jonathan Taylor because there's negative correlation between these guys because a big part of Anthony Richardson's value is the rushing touchdowns. So more rushing touchdowns for Richardson is a negative force against Jonathan Taylor's fantasy production. And so who are you going to stack him with? It's Pittman, it's Downs, it's Pierce, it's Pittman, it's Downs. And Pierce is super inexpensive. So that's the easy stack, the easy backdoor stack on Underdog and on FFPC best ball leagues. We talked about Alvin Kamara, where he should be drafted. A conundrum for me is Rhamondre Stevenson. Because by the numbers, he looks like a first-round pick. But it's the Patriots. And he's not the explosive playmaker that a lot of traditional first-round running backs are. So where are you at with Rhamondre Stevenson?
I think he's totally fine as a round 2 selection. I think even 1-2 turn is appropriate. The range of potential outcomes is noteworthy, and I think that Pierre Strong shouldn't be discounted. I do think that they'll want to get the passing down role going again, but Rhamondre, top 10 in yards per out run, top 2 in broken and missed tackles forced per reception last year. Top 5 yards after yards after contact per rush attempt. He's a complete player. Right now, not a whole lot to compete with, and if they don't bring in DeAndre Hopkins, I'm playing a little bit of 3D chess here, but if they don't bring in Hopkins, they're going to really have to distribute the ball. I think that would only help him. Now they might bring in Hopkins. We'll see. But I think he's a safe second-round pick. Now, the bummer here, just this last bit, this is the bummer. And so maybe he's a trade target, not a draft target. First 4 games, Philadelphia, Miami, Jets, Dallas. That's brutal. That is a no fun. Yeah.
The Patriots are going to lose a lot of games this year. But the beauty is, you talked about it, he was number 3 in targets by running backs in the NFL last year. 89 targets, 5.2 a game. He's top 15 in breakaway run rate. Like you said, his top 3 in evaded tackles per touch. The guy has that football player quality that you need. If you're not going to have great burst and speed, you need to have that it factor. And if you can be that good and that efficient in the passing game without incredible speed and burst, then you just have the right instincts. And so it's not a player that I would doubt. I had no idea he was this coming out of Oklahoma, but now that we've seen the advanced metrics on him, it's undeniable. I mean, his touchdown rate last year was only 2.2. Realize that? He's actually going to get mean progression this year. It's exciting.
He can still grow. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's a smash at pick, on FFPC ADP, pick 28, a little earlier on Underdog, but still, that's the guy to circle in the 3rd round at running back, no doubt. What about Javonte Williams? Because the news keeps coming out that the positive reports on Javonte Williams. And he is like a Rhamondre Stevenson in that he's big and he's super effective in the passing game. There's a lot to like with his profile, but he tore both ligaments.
He tore more than that. I believe he tore 3, and he damaged the posterolateral corner, the exterior corner. So I put him in. I've got him in. I think he should be drafted in the 8th round. Probably if Kamara comes off the board and you were, I was hoping Kamara was going to be there. I think Javonte Williams is appropriate. A quote here from Jeff Mueller. I talked to Jeff last night about this once I got the show sheet. We keep using the J.K. Dobbins timeline as a measure. I've personally stopped doing this because Javonte Williams has had 0 indications of scarring, 0 reports of secondary surgery, and appears to be full range of motion via video. He's 4 months ahead of J.K.'s timeline. Now, that's from a tweet from the 20th, but he talks about, if you read that further, Jeff has him he thinks by week 8, he thinks he can solidify himself as a running back 2, but should be able to pay off his ADP prior to that as a flex play. Williams was not someone that I was in on early in the offseason just because of that knee injury, but signs or things are looking good, and he should be on the field for week 1.
He didn't need a revision surgery, and it sounds like his rehabilitation is just going incredibly well, as well as I've never heard of a multi-ligament injury rehab going this well ever.
It's exciting. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, so I'm rooting for him too. And if Jeff says that this is the expectation, then that's the expectation. Like he knows a lot more about this than I do, so that makes a lot of sense. Given where he's going, given Kamara and so many others that are going in round 5 and beyond, so many just top running back talents and some of them in great situations. Do you think this is the best year for 0 RB that we've seen in a long time?
I think that the market is so hot on wide receivers generally. I'm having a very difficult time accepting that I need to embrace 0 RB more so this year than I did in the years prior. Some of the players that I just can't pass up, Nick Chubb, rounds 2 and 3, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Rhamondre, Breece Hall. I'm very much in on Breece Hall.
Yeah.
And I know we get into the, round 5 is where it's appropriate to start taking guys, but like Joe Mixon in the 4th round still looks like he's going to be good to go for the season.
Oh God. Yeah.
I am having a hard time. I'm totally drafting some 0 RB teams, but it's very difficult for me to commit to that fully for 2023 as like the best year ever.
Superflex is where you really should be going 0 RB, because in Superflex, you're forced to make difficult decisions, especially Superflex tight end premium. If that's the format that you're in, then you're going to want a premium tight end, and you're going to have to accept a 0 players with premium draft capital at some position. You're just going to have to make that decision. And that would be running back for me this year. Given that Kenneth Walker is a 5th round pick, Cam Newton, did I say Cam Newton? Cam Akers. I say Cam. Those are the outtakes. Oh my God, that's a great outtakes material. Yes, Cam Akers. What's Cam Akers? 7th round pick?
I'm not an Akers guy.
Okay. Oh, so you're bucking Josh Larkey on this.
I suppose if he's
Josh Larkey, famous Cam Akers advocate.
So I think that we still have a lot to learn about the status of his Achilles. He closed the year in a really impressive fashion, but if you look at the first half of the league, he was almost like gonna get cut. He's now on the final year of his deal, and shout out to Josh Norris and Hayden Winks. Love listening to their post-draft shows. They talked about Sean McVay's post-draft conference, and everyone should go watch it. You can, Zach Evans underdog, blah, blah, blah. You can look this up, but the message there indicates there may be a bit of a competition with Zach Evans. Of course, Cam Akers is the incumbent, and of course he's the favorite to start in week 1. But I have been making it a point to get Zach Evans exposure because I'm just, and I know you're not a huge fan of him, so come at me with this.
Low dog rating.
I just, what's that?
Zach Evans, low dog rating. Doesn't love the sport. Doesn't want to be there.
Okay, I can't speak.
Failed the interviews. Has no intensity. Doesn't want to be there. I don't know. I'm just saying. There's a reason why. Like, I used to tilt at windmills, right, and scream at the sky why the NFL doesn't appreciate the players I like, and I would just be intractable. And then when players I like, I never liked Zach Evans, but they fall to the 6th round, it's like, okay, why? What's going on here? And at the end of the day, guy transfers. He says it's to follow a coach, right? There's always some line. Like, feel like you can't discount Zach Evans. He transferred to stay with his coach. Aren't you going to make up some reason why you transferred? I want to be closer to my family. I want to be closer to my coach. It's not about me and my selfishness or my inability to beat Kendre Miller, right, in practice up the depth chart. It has nothing to do with that. I'm not going to admit that publicly. Do you think like these people that are in the comments talking about you don't know anything, right? You don't know the story, the backstory behind Zach Evans' transfer that was reported in SB Nation or whatever. It's like, yeah, I know what he told people was the reason. Just like there's lots of reasons why things get, and you're not going to highlight the reason that's embarrassing. And typically it's because you just weren't good enough. And so you just had to transfer. And sometimes with like a Keontae Ingram, it's like, that's okay. Like you're not as good as Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson's a hell of a talent. It's all right. You're not as good as Bijan. All right. Like, I'm not going to hold it against you, right? With Zach Evans, if you're supposed to be the guy, and you're the guy with the pedigree, the high school pedigree, and you're coming in to a top program, and suddenly you get usurped, and you run away to be with a coach, okay. But, I mean, you can't say that there's no merit whatsoever to this idea that transferring is a sign of weakness. It absolutely is. Most of the time, transferring is a sign of weakness.
It's a valid point. And so what comes to mind here is Pete Carroll, who is often just BSing at press conferences. He talks a lot about how he seeks out alpha type players, guys who are sort of the loudest, most braggadocious in the locker room. And the fact that Evans even had a little bit, there's some noise there with the transfer. Like I get that is, maybe it's not a red flag, but it's a flag. And that's fair. These guys who like Roschon, Bijan shows up, doesn't faze him. He just does his job, succeeds. And I'm a big fan of Roschon.
Yeah, because Roschon's like, listen, I'm not going to have my chance until the Senior Bowl. And on that one day in the Senior Bowl before I broke my hand and I played the entire practice with a broken hand, I am going to show out, and I'm going to be the guy the NFL Network runs over to interview. And that's exactly what happened with Roschon. So, yeah, you need to get – so that's one of the reasons. I mean, we're just stacking all these players. The bottom line is when you say Zach Evans and that's the guy you want to draft late, by all means. If it's Cam Akers, by all means. What I'm saying is it supports the strategy. It supports the strategy, whereas especially on these teams that don't have great running games and don't have great offensive lines – they still may run these running backs into the ground. I fully expect the Rams to run Cam Akers into the ground because he's gone next year anyway. Why not? Right? They're not going to. No need to use up Zach Evans. Actually, same thing with Tampa. It's like they have a guy in Rachaad White, and he's the main guy. They're gonna run him. Right? Like, do you believe in Rachaad White, or are you super concerned about the small sample broken tackles last year?
Well, this is funny because first I took a shot at Josh Larkey, and now you're taking a shot at Josh Larkey with the you believe in Rachaad White. I think he's a little skeptical Rachaad White. But
No,
you have
I
Josh on
understand the
Phillies.
skepticism. It's just that when you zoom out and you see what a guy did in college and how epic he was, and then you see a guy, what I care about is he going to get the ball in the red zone? Absolutely, right? Keyshawn Vaughn gets the ball in a key situation, he fumbles. They're not going to give the ball to Keyshawn Vaughn in a key situation. And why did the Miami Dolphins cut Chase Edmonds? Fumbles inside the 10. That is the reason. That is the reason they cut him. That's the reason they shelved him, is because he was fumbling inside the 10. So we have two players with ball security issues. So who's going to get all the red zone work? It's going to be Rachaad White. Okay. Now, who's
Totally
getting
fair.
all the action out of the passing game? So even if you don't love him as a talent, and I do respect Rachaad White as a talent because he was one of the more impressive all-purpose backs that we've seen come out of college in the last couple of years, running a sub 4.5 40 with the huge burst score and like the 19% college target share, right? And then what does he do? Well, he translates the college target share into actual NFL target share by being top 12 in targets, despite sharing a backfield with Leonard Fournette. So that, to me, is the screaming value in drafts. I mean, his ADP on the FFPC, in particular the high stakes drafters, has been marching up. It was like 85, 83. Now I'm looking up, it's 67. He's up 2 rounds just in the last couple months because the high stakes players recognize what's going on. Put your feelings about his ability to break tackles off to the side. There are certainly running backs that score a lot of fantasy points that aren't the best tackle breakers because they win with explosiveness and agility. They don't necessarily win with, stiff arms. That's okay.
Yep. I think he should get plenty of ugly volume. I think it'll be really inefficient, but he'll score points.
Yeah, I think he'll score points. But I think we're making a case for zero RB, especially in Superflex.
Totally fair. Yes.
Aren't we? I think we are. What about super deep running backs? Okay, besides Zach Evans, I think Zach Evans, you like him. I'm still not sure why. There was a press conference, I think, that you point to.
Damn.
Sorry.
Just throwing elbows.
But I love talking about these deep late round running backs.
Yeah.
So give me a few more, maybe that are like in the third position on the depth chart. We someone else in that Zach Evans category.
Yep.
A couple more.
Chris Rodriguez, Washington football team.
Ooh.
So we know what the upside is to Antonio Gibson. He's theoretically a dual threat player. Even though he's a veteran, he's built big. Brian Robinson, who was shot twice at the beginning of the season, still came in and outproduced him on the ground. So I don't think that Antonio Gibson is really that big of a threat to do a whole lot as a rusher. Brian Robinson, though, even though he beat out Antonio Gibson, he wasn't efficient. He wasn't really all that good.
What about all the hype out of camp where it's like the coaches have finally come to Jesus on Antonio Gibson? Do you believe that?
No, so Ron Rivera is coaching for his job. He has Eric Bieniemy in-house. He wants a hard-nosed ball carrier because he thinks that you control the clock via the run game. And what I see in Chris Rodriguez, okay, among Power 5 running backs with at least 150 rushing attempts over the last 2 seasons, Rodriguez finished in 2022 top 5 in both yards after contact per attempt and broken and missed tackles forced per rush attempt. He was top 12 in both categories in 2021. And in 2021, Bijan Robinson led all Power 5 running backs with 150 rush attempts with 41 broken tackles. Chris Rodriguez was number 2 with 40. He's 6 foot, 217. I don't think that he is a big time talent, but I think he can come into the game and knock heads and get really hard yards. I think that Chris Rodriguez, I'm not saying it's 50% or 80% or whatever odds. I think, though, he has a realistic possibility to steal the early down role in Washington this year. I also see Eric Bieniemy, the dude he was just coaching in Kansas City, where they featured maybe Pacheco can catch passes, but for much of the time there, a one-dimensional, violent rusher. I think the most violent-looking guy since like Stephen Ridley.
Pacheco.
He just learned, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. You like Pacheco, right? Another late-round guy. Gibson and Pacheco. Oh, we're zero RB to the moon, baby. This is why I'm going zero RB in the fishbowl right here.
I think that Bieniemy can think of Chris Rodriguez potential utilization similarly to Pacheco last year. Again, Brian Robinson, he'll start the year, of course, ahead of him on the depth chart, but I think that underdog drafters or wherever, I think it's not unreasonable to hope that you're adding 7 rushing touchdowns with an extremely late pick across all formats. So Chris Rodriguez, he's up there as a guy that I just love. Another one.
Whoa! I have to talk.
Okay.
Right? Don't forget, this is the show where I hog the microphone, remember?
I was on a roll.
I know you were. No, but I just want to make sure. No, it was great, and I probably shouldn't have stopped you, but I'm going to stop you because I had a thought. But I have a question, really. I have a question.
Huh?
What do you think I think about Brian Robinson?
I don't know. I think I've heard you.
See, this was worth me putting the brakes on the show. This was worth stopping your flow. This was worth dragging this show into the mud for this. Because that is what I think about Brian Robinson. And anyone that drafts Brian Robinson or any analyst that suggests that Brian Robinson is a value is committing fantasy analysis malpractice. Go ahead.
Okay, another guy that I like. We talked about him already. He's got a battle. He has an uphill battle to climb, but Roschon Johnson is the only potential dual threat running back in Chicago right now. They've got Khalil Herbert, who is a great rusher, small guy, great rusher. They've got Donta Foreman, who's a big guy, okay rusher, but they don't have anyone that they can put in there on all 3 downs. Roschon Johnson, already an accomplished pass protector. He's okay in the passing game and catching passes. He can do the wheel route thing. Can he
look really smooth at the Senior Bowl? Yeah.
So number 1 in broken and missed tackles forced per rush. Top 6 yards after contact per rush attempt. 1.7 yards per route run. Sorry, took condensed notes.
No, it's great. No, I'm loving this.
He can play. I believe in Roschon Johnson.
He's a stud. He's a fucking stud is what he is. He's a fucking stud. This is one of the best answers I've ever heard on the show. I love it. I busted out the harmonica for that. That's how much I loved it. Roschon. He's also going to get the Alfred Morris corollary. He's got to get his quarterback's going to be helping him freeze linebackers, be more efficient. Sure, he's going to cost them some touchdowns. That's okay. They might actually dial back Justin Fields, especially in the red zone, to try to say, hey, between the 20s, it's okay, but let's give the ball to Roschon here. Let's not fuck around.
He was a fun one. That was a guy that I linked to Chicago in a pre-draft series that I did at the 33rd team, looking at just how teams approach running backs through athleticism. And they did that presentation where they did the slideshow where they're like, here's all of our secret sauce. And that was validating because I think I had 7 of 8 data points. So that was really cool. But
yeah, that's amazing. Did you see the celebration when they got him in the draft?
No. I didn't.
Dude, the War Room, we saw that we were covering it live from Kansas City, and they flashed to the War Room, and it was like everyone just like stood up and was like, yes, dude. Like it was crazy. Like we were like, we got him. You know, and I'm like, fuck, yes, we got him. We won. It was amazing. Our whole house went nuts just because we're just big Roshan fans. It's like, it doesn't have to be hard. You have the advanced metrics from college. You have the one proof point when you get to play against better competition than any college player ever gets to play against at the Senior Bowl. And this guy was a total star. So eat it. I mean, the fact that he didn't go in the third round, I thought was embarrassing. And he would have gone in the third round had he not broken his hand. I can tell you that right now. He was killing it.
Where do you want me to go?
He was killing it.
No, I know.
No, I'm just saying. He was killing. So we actually have DeAndre Hopkins ranked pretty high because we believe he's going to play this year. And if he's going to play, he's going to be DeAndre Hopkins. It's just that you can always get a discount when a guy has just a blank next to the team on his profile. And so do you agree that now is the time to get him and he's going to, no matter where he goes, as soon as he lands somewhere, he's going to go up around?
Yes. It even if it's a bad fit, the fanfare will drive up the ADP.
Absolutely. Titans or Patriots? What do you prefer?
Patriots. He can command a larger target share there, and he's not going to mess with Treylon Burks and Chigozie Okonkwo, who I'm both a big fan of both of them.
Mac Jones is better than Tannehill and better than Levis. Right? I mean,
I don't.
No.
Tannehill. I hope Mac Jones is better than Tannehill, but Tannehill.
No, he is.
He's okay.
Oh, he is. Tannehill was terrible his first few years. Tannehill was a joke. Tannehill was not fixed because he started his Texas A&M career as a wide receiver. Tannehill was not fixed until he left Miami. Like, he was run out of Miami. So, and Mac Jones could still be run out of New England. He looks like he's in the process of getting run out. I'm just saying that he showed more at this point than Tannehill did then. You know, they got him. Mike Wallace at the time was seen as a bit in Brian Hartline. You remember this? Or are you too young for this?
Mm-hmm. No, I remember.
Yeah, it was like, oh, it didn't work. Oh, he's a bust. And then the Titans were like, well, actually, he seems pretty athletic, and he has a big arm, and we're gonna go ahead and try it. And he was fine. He was a lot more efficient than anyone even thought was possible. But it's like, that's Miami, man. That's the old Miami Dolphins, one of the more broken franchises. We talked about Washington; they're a broken franchise. Settle a debate from the Sonic Truth podcast. We had a big overtime debate. On our YouTube channel, we have Sonic Truth Overtime, and you can look for the Sonic Truth Overtime video on our YouTube channel. It is Theo, Allen, and I debating McLaurin versus Dotson in Dynasty. Dun dun.
For me, I don't think this is close. I think this is Terry McLaurin.
Thank you. You know we're in the minority, right?
Well, how? See,
people love Dotson because they saw a couple plays where he looked explosive, but then all of the advanced metrics suggest that he's a guy.
Yep. I think that he is just a guy. I think McLaurin is one of the early iterations of kind of the smaller X receiver. Like, all wide receivers seem to be getting smaller. And I know next year's class is supposed to be big, but you can still go do cool X things in that I got his profile up now. So 6 foot 208. That is fine. He can go do the traditional X things like that. His worst yards per out run season, depending on which database you look at, which there's a surprising amount of variance when you get to look behind the scenes and everything. But 1.9 yards per out run is the worst. He's been over at 2.0 or higher in 3 of 4 seasons. What are you hoping for in a number one wide receiver?
No, he looked explosive in some GIFs on Twitter. Don't you understand, Nick? No, there's some big splash plays where he had a bunch of yards after the catch and looked great. But the thing is, when you look at the air yards, not impressive. But then even the YAC's not impressive. It's like literally these couple plays were all he had. And a bunch of randomized touchdowns at like 18% touchdown rate. It's like, listen, guys, how you win, and this is what I try to tell, Theo knows a lot, and I would rarely challenge him, but this was the one place I challenged him on the Sonic Truth. I'm like, hey, we have a rule here that if you're going to go out and be a 20% touchdown rate guy, you're going to be Christian Watson or you're going to be Jahan Dotson, just trend carefully the next year, like with that guy. And then, if a guy has a 0% touchdown rate, like Deontay Johnson, just draft him every fucking time. Right? There's certain starting points where if you were running like a school for fantasy, right, there would be a few like, okay, here are some easy wins in drafts, some easy markers in the sand that you can look at, right? And the touchdown rate regression or progression is one of those things, right? We're going to see progression from Deontay Johnson. And by the way, every time someone says positive regression, slap yourself in the face. Slap yourself in the face when it's a nonsense term. Regression has a negative connotation by definition. And what's the opposite is progression. So it's touchdown progression if you believe that the guy is going to score more touchdowns per target this year than he did last year. It's touchdown regression. And Christian Watson can suffer regression and still be great. It's very possible. Jahan Dotson, he was a touchdown-centric player, touchdown-dependent player last year, and the peripheral metrics weren't impressive. So get the hell out of here. And yes, Terry McLaurin, on the other hand, has been, top 12 in air yards every year. So, just shut up. Shut up with this. Again, we have them adjacent in the Dynasty. We have them adjacent. And I'm like, shut up. Don't even come to me. That's a non-debate. We have them adjacent. I'm such a fraud. All right. These two players we do not have adjacent. Okay, we do not have adjacent. Okay. Addison and Quentin Johnston. And Jaxon Smith-Njigba. It's three guys. I said two. I'll give you three. They just happen to be 3 out of the 4 wide receivers drafted in the first round, but they're also the 3 guys where their ADPs have clustered, like in Dynasty, you see Johnston sometimes going ahead of even Smith-Njigba, which I don't agree with. And I I told the story once in a podcast, but I did trade up. I was at the 108, and I traded up because I was terrified that the guy was going to draft Addison, and I didn't want to give him the opportunity to make mistakes. It was exactly what I tell people not to do. Usually just let your teammates mess up in front of you. We just had this conversation 30 minutes ago as a piece of advice for the public, and I violated that because, to me, I'm going to tell you how I feel once I hear your thoughts. I almost spoiled it. I do this, and this is something I'm trying to get better at. I give my entire take as part of the question instead of just asking the guest the question like a polite person. So I'm gonna remove myself and my ego for a moment, put it off to the side. You have Jordan Addison, you have Quentin Johnston, you have Jaxon Smith-Njigba. How do you decode those 3 guys and how much you like them?
If I'm looking for consistency, I think week 1 through week 17, then I think that Jordan Addison is the appropriate guy to be looking at. So if we're focusing on our type of build, I just think in a PPR format, I think he'll be a quick contributor, and I think that he's going to be a problem for TJ Hawkinson. I think as the season progresses, Jaxon Smith-Njigba can carve out a larger and larger role. I think that you should absolutely have exposure to him, but I think that he might start slower. I think this is the one that I'll take a second to dig into. Quentin Johnston is an exceptional prospect, and I'm excited for us to butt heads here. So among 66 Power 5 wide receivers with at least 75 targets, Quentin Johnston ranked number 11, tied for number 11 in targets per out run, number 3 in yards per out run. He was number 1 in broken and missed tackles forced per reception, number 2 in yards after contact per reception. Number 3 yards after contact per reception, and he was number 3 in total broken tackles, number 11 in total missed tackles forced. I think,
man, if they switch him to running back, he's going to be awesome.
I think I touched on the idea of the wide receiver position getting smaller and Terry McLaurin being an X receiver, but just being a little bit smaller than they typically have been in the past. I think that's what Quentin Johnston is, and I think that he landed in a situation that is extremely exciting. I don't think that he will compete target share wise with Jordan Addison for the first month or so, but a little bit of foreshadowing. I'm going to keep something in my back pocket here. I have very high hopes and high expectations for Quentin Johnston as the season progresses.
He got better and better, man. He went from 22 catches to 33, then to 60. He went from 47 yards total receiving yards to 600 plus, and then over 1,000. Target share went up every year. Catch rate went up every year. There's very few wide receivers that over the course of those 3 years, they just progressively get better and better and better. And then he came out early. So he's got a lot going for him. I am shook by the pro day 40 time. I got to tell you, I'm real shook. The athleticism is not what you want, right? What you don't want from a wide receiver is where the burst score is their best workout metric. The receivers with the high burst scores that are lower than their 40 times and they have bad agility scores, it's Dante Moncrief, it's Josh Dotson. There's a long history of this shape of workout metrics, and it hasn't worked out well. Now, these guys, Brashad Perriman was very similar in that he was also great after the catch. He was bigger, faster, stronger in college than other defensive backs in particular, because playing at USF or UCF. So at Central Florida, he was poised to really dominate after the catch, and then that's what he did, right? He could run away from people and so on. Quentin Johnston feels like that, where a lot of the metrics you're citing are once the ball is in his hands, where the opposite is true with Addison, where he is winning before the ball gets to his hands. He is the one creating separation, and especially in Dynasty, I'm more looking at a Deontay Johnson because I want that safe floor. I have this guy for his career. I want the guy that's going to go out and command targets with separation. I'm worried about Johnston there. That's my one worry. He's going to get out there and he's going to be a field stretcher that's not fast enough. And he's going to be a player they need to scheme touches for. And whenever I hear that, a shiver runs down my spine. Because I heard that about Tavon Austin. I've heard that about so many wide receivers. Kevin White. Right? There's a long list of receivers that he has similarities to, echoes of, and almost all of them have busted. That is my fear.
Yeah, so Los Angeles has the need for speed, so to speak, and I think you and I might view how average depth of target occurs a little bit differently, because I look at them and I see 12.6 average depth of target, tied for number 14 in the qualifying wide receiver group I mentioned earlier. He's shown an ability to win downfield. Now, again, they do need speed, and they might be trying to pigeonhole the guy or sort of square peg, round hole by putting him in
the Jalen Guyton role?
Yeah, but I have less concerns about his talent, and it won't surprise me if what we see ultimately is they try to get him to run down the field more and more, and he's just more suited in the traditional, I guess maybe they'll try him in like a Sammy Watkins kind of role, where it's like an X receiver who plays further downfield sort of deal. But Mike Evans is the one who's been prowling the deep end for a long time, or excuse me, Mike Williams, and he's not that fast, but it would just make a lot more sense to me for the pieces to mesh together if they just continue to send him downfield and they have Quentin Johnston work in the intermediate to deep area. and they just play another year without.
You think that that's what they might do, but I can tell you they're not going to do that. They've actually been bringing Mike Williams closer to the line of scrimmage. He's getting older. He can't win downfield. He's actually been better on slants, as his career has aged. He's aged. Mike Williams has aged actually better than people think, or most people think. And then I have people in the chat saying some of the stupidest shit, like senior football. You're great, buddy, but what are you talking about? Quentin has a faster 40 time than Mike Williams and Keenan Allen? Yeah, no shit, right? But they play completely different positions. Mike Williams is the classic clasher X receiver. He is that guy that goes out on an island and you throw it up in contested situations. That's been his whole play style, his entire career, going all the way back to his time at Clemson. That's who he is. That's not Quentin Johnston. He's not a contested catch player. And he's not Keenan Allen, who is one of the great separators in the history of the sport. What are you talking about? He's not like the suction cup hands, incredible route runner, underneath receiver. That's not Quentin Johnston. That's not his play style. There's a lot of different ways you could win at the wide receiver position. What I'm saying is Quentin Johnston won in a way in college that has a very difficult time of translating, or at least a low probability of translating, when these other players like Jordan Addison, who is smaller, right, who is less athletic, but the way he wins in college translates well to what they're going to ask him to do and how he'll be able to win at the NFL level. That's why I prefer Addison, and I prefer him to such an extent, so much more than Johnston, that I was willing to trade up. Now, it wasn't much of a trade up. I exchanged running backs that one could easily outscore the other. In fact, you talked about Khalil Herbert. I gave up Khalil Herbert. Like, big deal. Right? I got Michael Carter back. It wasn't even like a downgrade. Okay. But the bottom line is I did it. The bottom line is I said, I am trading up one spot because there's a 50-50 chance this guy takes Addison, and I'm not taking that chance. Yes, it's possible that Johnston outproduces Addison this year and he hits his upside. And in that case, I'm going to have some Johnston in seasonal leagues and best ball. Absolutely. But when it comes to taking a guy in the first round, where first round busts in rookie drafts can be hugely damaging in Dynasty, I ain't doing it, man. I ain't taking that chance. There's too much bust risk where there's very little. I mean, Addison is one of the most insulated from busting players I've seen, especially now he's going to the Vikings and he's going to have all that attention on Jefferson. I mean, it's a dream scenario for a guy entering the league and having a nice, smooth transition into the NFL. Whereas Johnston, my worry is they're going to ask him to play a role that requires 4-4 wheels, and he doesn't have that.
They might. When you're talking about his style of winning, so the separation, I think I view the separation thing and the catching issues as different, and that's kind of what I want to poke at here. Body catching doesn't bother me. You brought up T.O. earlier on, and
Body's a body catcher, famous body catcher.
Yeah. Do you have how do you view catch form? Do you mind body catching?
I don't mind it, but it's part of a larger problem where Brashad Perriman had like gloves that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they were his whole arm sleeve was a glove because he just couldn't squeeze the football. So I think what's going to happen to Quentin Johnston is the glove is just going to keep expanding and expanding, and it's going to cover his entire arm by the time he's out of the league, which will happen probably pretty quickly.
No, this is good. I bet this was the conversation that I was most looking forward to.
It's just another nail in the coffin for him. It's just another thing. If it was one thing, right? If he did all these other things well and there were no red flags, I would be very happy and not worried about like the body catching. It's not something I don't think is a big deal, right? The catch style, right? But I'll tell you one thing. I mean, Keenan Allen's not body catching. Okay. So, I mean, and you know who else has incredibly strong hands that we talked about earlier is Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman is a body snatcher. He's not a body catcher. He's a body snatcher because he will snatch the ball away from a cornerback and like steal his soul. He thought he had an interception. No, not so fast. I'm Rashad Perriman. So the fact that you're stacking Lamar with Andrews and Bateman, and that you're touting Roschon Johnson, you can tout surefire busts like Quentin Johnston for the rest of the show, and it's not going to matter. You're a made man, Nick. You're a made man. None of that matters. Now, you can be wrong, but all the rest of the players you talk about today, it's not going to matter. You're already a made man. What about late round? Late round wide receivers with upside. I'll tell you, I like Michael Wilson. The target competition is low in Arizona, and they're going to be playing from behind a lot, and he has a super complete profile, and he has a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns because he barely played in college, which I think is what gives him his value. And then Calvin Austin, as I mentioned, he's a deep separator, and it's going to be easy for me to imagine him cracking the line. I just love speed, right? For all the same reasons, like you just place a chip on a late round, fourth round, fifth round wide receiver with speed. Tyreek Hill is the best example, but you just put your chips on the 4-3 wheels and you see what happens. Those guys have a way of finding a way into lineups in the NFL. Give me a couple more late round wide receivers.
Okay. If we have time, I want to hear more about Calvin Austin, but my two guys, Alec Pierce, Indianapolis Colts, 11.9 yard average depth of target. Anthony Richardson's last season was 10.7, so they're working in the same area of the field. I like that a lot. Pierce was at 14.5 yards per reception, despite the clown car quarterback situation that Indianapolis had last year. It is it's a late round guy, so I'm not saying, he can be your wide receiver 3, but I think that Alec Pierce can have a number of really fun performances this year. I heard you mention on another show, this was Chris Ballard's best draft in a while. I agree with it. They improved the offensive line.
Just pinch me, dude. Like I'm like my nipples were tingling.
That I'm not going to pinch there, but
anyway. Sorry. Those are two separate thoughts. Those were separate thoughts, Nick. Come on, man. Separate. I wasn't implying.
Your responsibility, not mine. So, did you have any thoughts on Alec Pierce? Because I'm getting on a roll again.
No, I think it's fine. No, I'm not. I'm just down the middle on Alec Pierce, but I'm getting a lot of him because you got to stack Richardson. When you draft Richardson, you may or may not have drafted Pittman already. That's the thing when in best ball. When the receiver goes before the quarterback, which is in most cases, then there's going to be plenty of instances where you don't have Pittman, but Richardson's there, he's slipping, and you got to get him. You got to get him, and then you got to backdoor stack him. So that's it.
I think I'm across the board at 13 or 17% exposure with Pittman, Pierce, and Jelani Woods too. And
I think Jelani Woods is really the way to go.
Yeah, I'm going to put that one back in the bag because we can talk about him later. The other,
I said earlier that I feel bad that I said earlier, they don't have a tight end of consequence. They don't have a tight end that's produced yet. That's all I'm saying.
I hear you.
But Jelani Woods has incredible potential.
Second receiver, Jonathan Mingo. And so Carolina Panthers. This was not a player that I expected to be high on, but I really, really like the Jacksonville Jaguars passing game, and looking at the Week 17 correlation stuff, I've been taking more Panthers than I expected. Just as, hey, let's add this guy, let's add this guy.
Chark, Terrace Marshall.
Okay, so here's when I'm looking at Mingo. The reason why I like Mingo is that I think that he can win this target competition. He was at over 2 yards per out run last year, despite playing as a tight end like 20% of the time because that team was just bizarre. But Chark under 1.5 yards per out run over the last 2 years. Adam Thielen barely cleared 1 yard per out run last year.
Thielen's gone. Thielen's dust.
Yeah. And I don't know about, I'm not that high. I think Chark might be toast. I did invest in Terrace Marshall a little bit.
Oh yeah.
This offseason. I think the light deserves to still just be on just a smidge, but I don't
think that Terrace Marshall is the savviest route runner. I don't think he's breaking down a lot of tape, right? I don't think he's like Cooper Kupp, like mind melding with quarterbacks. I think that he's in his own world. He's super athletic, and those guys typically they take longer to break out because they're just not focused on all the little things. But eventually these guys like a Terrace Marshall, they'll have a year. Chark had his year. Remember Chark had the 1,100-yard year.
Yeah.
Right? They have a year. Dwayne Bowe. These guys, they have a year in them. Right? They'll have it, but again, it doesn't endure. It's not like it's like, oh, Marshall is going to... No. Marshall is going to have one of these years, and it's going to be a year where there's not a lot of target competition. And if Bryce Young exceeds expectations, then I think it's going to be great for Marshall. I think that he does have the explosiveness, and if you're Bryce Young, you don't necessarily need every wide receiver to be running on-time routes every time. You're good enough, or he was sold to be good enough, that he can throw a back shoulder to Terrace Marshall. Like he can do some of the things that Burrow was doing with Marshall at LSU. And I think that's another positive that is under discussed with Terrace Marshall. With Mingo, I will offer you a bit of advice. Generally speaking, you don't want to be too far out in front on too many rookie wide receivers. From Sky Moore last year, even George Pickens had a lot of hype throughout the preseason and never actually delivered. And you go down the board and it's like, yeah, Treylon Burks did nothing last year. Drake London was what? Wide receiver 40-ish in that zone. It's we talked about Jahan Dotson. So it's appealing because at this point in the year, a lot of these rookies, they start to lose a little steam in best ball and they start to become real attractive values. And I totally get it. But you want to be very careful and pick your spots with these rookies. And a rookie receiver with a rookie quarterback on a team that wants to run the ball and play defense, who's out here signing Adam Thielen, may not be a great move.
One of our mutual friends, Jax Falcone, a.k.a. Scott Belanger, loves to tease me about how much I love to believe in players. And
yeah.
I do fall for rookie wide receivers. It's a very fair observation and critique to make.
I'm just saying. I didn't even know that coming in. I'm just adding up in my head all the rookie wide receivers. And here's the thing. You don't want to go to the dark side like Jaxon and I. You don't want to go. Do you realize that what I have to deal with when I call Quentin Johnston or Jonathan Mingo, a likely bust, even though most wide receivers bust, right? Wide receivers like, You remember there was a receiver that had some impressive production, but he was better before the catch, or he was better after the catch with the ball in his hands. And he was a first-round pick, late first round. And again, my metrics suggested this guy was a lock to be a productive wide receiver in the league. His name was N'Keal Harry.
Yep. I knew it.
So I mean, Scott is just been burned many times, as I have, by all of these fucking guys. And so, it just eventually you just look yourself in the mirror and go, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I'm going to see what happens when I play the probabilities, and actually like fewer rookie receivers in the first couple rounds than I love. And I'm gonna take the blowback. And sometimes, the clip will get played on repeat by Steve Smith. This is what happens, right? But here's the thing, Nick. If you like every receiver and you love every rookie, you're never going to get clipped and taken out of context. No one's ever going to quote tweet, make fun of you because you were too high on N'Keal Harry before he ever took an NFL snap. No one cares. There's not a single person's victory lapping on someone that liked N'Keal Harry heading into his rookie year. It's not a thing you ever need to worry about as a fantasy analyst. But you can be very careful fading players. Because when you fade players, if they break out in your face, you'll never hear the end of it. You'll never hear the end of it. So what I would suggest that you do is just keep doing what you're doing, because this is a happy place. You're living in the Matrix, right? The machines are feeding you through tubes. You're fine. You're never going to have to worry about anything. But if you take this red pill, as Jax and I have done, and you go into the reality of with all the dirt and all the smog and all the shit, and all the evil trolls, it's a whole. You have to arm yourself. You have to put some emotional armor around yourself to do that. My advice is don't do it. It's not worth it. Just love everybody.
That's the plan.
I mean, from someone who's been there, I just want a steak. That's it. I just want a steak and a baked potato. Get hooked, please. God. All right. Give me a late round tight end other than Jelani Woods that you like.
Hayden Hurst.
Shut up.
So we're sticking with. I know.
Wow. So you must love Bryce Young.
He was a guy that I was surprised with how much exposure I was getting. And I wish we had more time because I want to trigger you with this too. I blame.
What do you mean have more time? The show doesn't have a time limit.
Okay. All right. Then we'll just keep going. So Hayden Hurst, here's what I like about Hayden Hurst. One, he's not going to be your first tight end, right? Where he's going, this is a depth piece. I did some work for the 33rd team looking at week 17 matchups, and I know week 17 can be way overweighted, but we're having fun with this. They play the Jaguars in week 17. No linebacking core in the NFL is more fun to start tight ends against than the Jacksonville Jaguars. Devin Lloyd, Boyasade Aluakan, and Chad Muma are the worst linebacker trio, and I wish them all, a happy Merry Christmas and everything. I'm
sure I wish the best of their family too. I think they're great guys. I'm sure they people love them.
But that was my pride and joy. I called a good performance by Okonkwo 10 weeks in advance for when they played at the end of the year last year. Hurst he's just not going to be a high rostered guy. You can get him as your second or third tight end. And if you want a long shot tight end who's going to score a touchdown in week 17, that's the dart that I'm throwing. So there's my guy, Hayden Hurst.
The Hurst thirst. All right. So give us a truther. Who's a guy that you're not dropping? A guy I like is Albert Akuikbunam. I also like Ashton Doolin. Do you have anyone at that level in Dynasty, especially?
Yeah. So we're going to shout out Jax again.
Ooh, more Jax talk. Hey, Jax, you're doing great, buddy.
He's on that short list that I mentioned earlier. Scott is a special person. I appreciate Scott a lot.
Too late to spit out the red pill, Scott.
Julius Chestnut. Tennessee Titans number 4 running back.
No, Hassan Haskins was arrested.
There we go. There's one of the things on the list. So Hassan Haskins was arrested, I think, on June 30th. Derrick Henry, I mean, the man moves mountains, but he's another year older. Julius is built to carry the load. 5'11", 228 pounds. I know he played Sacred Heart, not top tier competition, but he got it done in a dual threat capacity. He did some fun stuff in the preseason, catching passes. Henry is 29. Haskins was arrested, and Tyjae Spears doesn't have an ACL in one knee, and he's got full cartilage degeneration. It's a long shot. This is a truth or pick, again, for the listeners. But if you're looking for a player who is built to handle the load in a prolific rushing scheme, I mean, it's Julius Chestnut. So he's still taking up space on taxi squads for me.
As he should be. I can't believe more people don't have this guy. I mean, he's a full-blown handcuffed Derrick Henry. It's not going to be Spears getting the workhorse touches. Absolutely not. It's going to be 60-40 with the carry split with Chestnut and Spears in the passing game. Chestnut was always a better running back than Hassan Haskins anyway. And he is one of my guys. Absolutely. He's absolutely one of my guys. And I'm going to do a monologue on this next week. But I'll preview. I won't give all my running backs, but there's another running back that I like. That would be a truther at this point. I guess he's a truther. Kevin Harris is very much like this, where it's the exact same situation where Pierre Strong is essentially Spears, right? And Rhamondre is Derrick Henry, and Kevin Harris is that next guy, the third running back in quotes, who would be getting more carries than the number 2 running back should the running back at the top of the depth chart miss time. And both are explosive runners that can break a lot of tackles. And then you can just see all the film guys lining up behind the Kevin Harrises and behind the Julius Chestnuts if and when they get their opportunities. And then I have a third guy we'll talk about next week on the monologue for the podcast. Give me a bold prediction. He's pulling up his notes.
Yep.
I knew
it! Quentin Johnston takes over as the Los Angeles Chargers' number 1 wide receiver by the end of the 2023-2024 NFL season.
That's the show, and I love it because it's plausible because the other guys are in their 30s. It just makes sense. It's very easy to see. You got an injury to Keenan Allen and a quick sort of degeneration of ability by Mike Williams that we didn't see coming. Like I said, these guys dustify in 6 weeks. You get a guy that's playing at a high level, next thing you know, he's dust. And that you could easily see that with Mike Williams, given what he's been through in his career, like his whole career trajectory. This is not a guy that's going to have a long career. Like he's probably holding on to a thread right now, just his ability to play on the outside of the NFL, given he doesn't have the speed from the beginning. And now that he's hitting 30, he's not going to be in the league that long. So he's not going to be in the league that long. And, Keenan Allen's been suffering through a lot of these like lower body injuries, soft tissue injuries. So you could see hamstring for Keenan Allen at the end of the year, Mike Williams, degeneration, overall talent degeneration. Next thing you know, Quentin Johnston, he exceeds my expectations. There he is. So it makes a lot of sense.
And I know you're not an OC guy, but I do think that Kellen Moore has a chance to show us a version of Herbert that we just haven't seen yet. And I want to move him up in the rankings. I've got him at quarterback 6 right now, and I really don't like it. I want to put him higher, but it's very challenging for me to drop Hurts, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, Jaxon, And I want to put Trevor Lawrence higher. Jax has sold me on Trevor as the guy to buy. I wish I had listened to him more last year, but such is life.
Herbert's going to smash this year. Bye, everybody. Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.